Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Kwikset number SL1000WI in an 11P finish. This is going to be a passage set, the Winston lever. And I'm going to take all the components out here. We're going to take a closer look at what this is. Take a look at the installation instructions as well. I would have called this a Delta lever at one time. But this is what Winston looks like, the Winston design. The 11P is what they call aged bronze. It is certainly different than oil-rubbed bronze. I can attest to that. It does reflect very light, and don't quote me, but very light tones of antique streaking through the lever. You know, finishes are subjective. You can see it a little on the top here and the streaking in the face of it. That's what aged bronze is going to look like. Typical Kwikset tubular construction. Kwikset is, from what I understand, the manufacturer who ships more locks a day than anyone else. I have been told that they literally ship 1 million locks a day. That's pretty difficult to wrap your head around. I believe it to be true because the source that told me that, I believe, would know what they're talking about. Very simple construction. And what I mean by that is they're really easy to put together. You need a screwdriver is all you need if you're replacing existing units. You're going to feature a adjustable back set, 2 3/8, 2 3/4. It's going to work either way. Installation is really easy. You've got your 2 holes, and then your spindle is going to come through here. 2 3/8. A new hole reveals itself. Okay. Once that's together, that'll go on. You'll rotate that down to get access to the screws, which are included. There'll be a total of 6 screws with a lock like this. 2 to hold the lock together, 2 for the latch bolt, 2 for the strike plate. Let's take some basic dimensional properties about this item. The latch front is going to be 2 1/4 by 1 inch. It's going to have radiused corners, and those corners are 1/4 inch radius. The strike plate is going to be 2 1/4 tall. It's what we call a full lip strike. You can see why we would call it that. It's also called a D strike. You can see why we would call it that as well. Overall width of the strike is about 1 3/4 inches. Strikes are really measured from the center line of the screw holes to the edge of the lip, and this is about 1 3/16 inches, and that is considered standard, a standard lip length for really all locks. 1 3/16, 1 1/4, 1 5/16, in that range is going to be considered standard. There are specialty strikes that have longer lips, extended lip strikes. There are those that have shorter lips as well when the application calls for it. Not uncommon to see either longer or short. Also in the package, you're going to get this push pin tool. There's nothing on here that requires that push pin tool. And you can remove the inside lever should you need to, but there would be, well, I suppose you would remove that if you wanted it to be a bit easier to get to the screws. And what's bad about the screws being positioned where they are is that you have to either remove the lever to get access to the other one, which is probably why they include that push pin, or you have to rotate the lever severely. Other manufacturers have them at 12 and 6. And at least this way, you're not going to see one of the screws generally when you're approaching the door. Now, there are installation instructions included, and let's take a closer look at all of that document. Let's take a closer look. They are also linked to down below this video so that you can review them before, after the sale. And let's go through it. And I did, of course, realize I was not exactly aware of that push pin. You're possibly going to need. You don't with this lock because this lock is non-handed, but if you have a lever that's handed, and what Kwikset has done is made all of their levers identical except for handing, which means every lock that you order, if it's a handed lever, you know, it's a I can't, a Kwikset lever design that's handed doesn't come to mind, but they would certainly have several and many. If you order a function other than passage, well, any function with a handed lever, forgive me, because you're going to want the screw in the rows on the proper side. They have manufactured those levers to be identical with the exception of hand, left hand, right hand, you know, curved style, where you can remove the levers, flip them around, and if you have a keyed function, you can take the cylinder out of the improper hand of lever, put it into the other, and then put it all back together. That's why that push pin is there. And I'll tell you, Kwikset does a lot of interesting things in terms of making the consumer's job one that doesn't require a lot of thought, meaning they keep it simple. That method, KISS. And this is a great example of that. And that's probably why they ship 1 million locks a day. They're also really interesting when it comes to their smart key technology. And while from a locksmith perspective, I would I don't know that I would espouse a smart key technology in terms of having a tool that if anyone with knowledge of the tool and a key would be able to, without removing the lock from the door and very quickly rekeying it, I may not want that knowledge and capability just in anyone's hands. If someone's going to rekey a lock, you don't want it to be something that can be done in seconds without any, possibly without other people knowing. They have their key control style deadbolt, where there are actually 2 cylinders buried in the deadbolt, because that smart key technology does not permit master keying. So if a landlord wants to be able to enter with a master key all of the Kwikset products, that landlord can do so by virtue of that key control slash smart key deadbolt that they have. And the ability to switch all of this around is just really great. I don't do a lot of Kwikset because we are primarily a commercial hardware distributor, but Kwikset dollar for dollar is just a name that everyone is familiar with. And I can also attest to the caliber of their technical support. You wouldn't think a company that ships 1 million locks a day would be responsive. I called their pro line, asked lots of questions of that person. They were able to answer 9 out of 10 of them, was unsure on the 9th, sent me to technical support, who then absolutely clarified that answer on that 10th question, so to speak. So it's really great that they're able to actually support the professional, not only, you know, just ship 1 million locks a day. Now, the installation instructions. Page 1 is a quick installation guide, and really that graphic that's showing you there is, you know, you don't need to know anything else. This is how it goes together. They do want you to review your dimensional properties, which is going to be a 2 1/8 inch hole, a crossbore, with a 1 inch hole in the edge at 2 3/8 or 2 3/4 backset. Not a lot to have to worry about that in that regard. Okay, there is a small amount of engineering that's been done on this latch bolt. You can see that it has these relieved edges here, and that's to account for a door that's beveled. So they've done a really great job of being able to accommodate that sort of application. 2 3/8 or 2 3/4 is the dimension of the edge of the door to the center of that crossbore, but it's really the center of the thickness of the door to the center of the hole. Well, if you have a square edge door, it doesn't really matter if it's 2 3/8 or 2 3/4, depending on what side of the door that you're marking off of. But if you have a beveled door, you know, 2 3/8, if measured on the push side versus the pull side, is a different location on the door. Regardless, this latch bolt will accommodate, that latch bolt face will accommodate a beveled edge door, which is really smart. Make sure that your dimensions are there, and if you need to prep something, have at it. Now, in step 2, they're showing backset as measured from the edge of the door, they are certainly assuming a square edge door. However, again, whether your hole is off, 3/32 of an inch, the design of this latch bolt is the design of the Kwikset product is going to tolerate that. So you would be able to be off a small amount if you're prepping a door with a beveled edge, 2 3/8 or 2 3/4. If you're marking from one side or the other, will not be the true backset, but this lock will tolerate being off that small amount. Other locks are less tolerant. In step 3, they show you that you're going to do either a mortised face latch, and that's generally 5/32 of an inch, or a drive-in style latch. When you drill that 1-inch hole in the edge of the door, you'll push that right in. You're going to want to observe before you put it in what your backset is and make any changes necessary. Okay, it can go in this way, it can go in this way, it doesn't matter. Completely non-handed in that regard. Just you don't want to have to take it out. It does give you a little marking there what you're dealing with. They do indicate that they don't want the hub, the retracting hub of the latch bolt on a diamond. It does need to be in a square orientation, which is representative of how this unit is to be inserted. It's not supposed to go in like that. I'm unable to get this hub to misbehave in any way. It's not perfectly square, but yeah, you obviously get the point. You can't make it diamond shaped. So that might be called out there because manufacturers, regardless of who it is, are constantly evolving their product line. And customers call me up and say, I've been working on so-and-so locks for 30 years. I can't figure it out. And I've been guilty of it too. We're just overthinking it. They've re-engineered the design of the latch bolt, and now you don't have to do that. I've had people call me trying to reposition a latch bolt, and it turns out that's not necessary at all. Just stick it in the hole that it lines up. So they might do that because people might get real curious on how that this can work. And what I mean to say is, if I push that latch bolt in, I can then turn that hub because my latch bolt is absolutely already retracted. Okay, so you're not going to put your thumb on there, inadvertently have that hub, at some sort of an angle, and then try to put it together. So they're basically, saying, don't absent-mindedly push that latch bolt in when you're installing it. So again, a brilliant take on how to KISS, keep it simple. If you're going to put those latch bolts in, just don't, with a drive-in, there's usually some compression fitting that's involved in the edge of that door, so be mindful. Put a block of wood over your latch bolt and gently tap it in with a mallet. I would use a mallet. Getting to page 2, once you've got your hole prepped, and we can talk ad nauseum about how to prep a hole. Page 2 shows you how to get the strike installed. That's real typical sort of information. Then you're going to just put your lock together. The exterior side will go in first. Then you're going to bring your interior side. If you've removed that lever to make it easy, that's fine. Okay, put your 2 screws. As we continue into page 2 of the installation instructions, step 6 in fact, they're saying that the turn button might be needed if it's a privacy function or a keyed function with a turn button. You might need to rotate that to get the lock to set down because there is a tailpiece that needs to fit into a slot on the inside of that turn button, and that needs to be this way. If you're not aligned, it's not going to work correctly. Now moving into page 3, they do indeed talk about how to reverse the trim. That's where that push pin is going to come into play, be able to depress that. You might need to switch your cylinder around in order to get that to work, but it's all incredibly simple to put together. Generally what I do is when I move that cylinder, I will insert the key so I can keep the cylinder captive in the lever, insert the key and then just turn it like 10 degrees, and then the cylinder's not going to move on you at all as you insert it down into the lock. That's how I would go about doing it. The final page discusses at length how to mortise the door for your lock sets if you're doing a new installation. Apparently a lock is going to include a template. I do not see a template anywhere with all of the paperwork. But nonetheless, you don't need a paper template to do it. It's either 2 3/8 or 2 3/4. They give you a guideline of where to install it from the bottom of the door. 38 inch is certainly within range. You'll find, we'll actually say to the floor, 36, 38, 40 would be really good. Getting above 40 would be atypical. Commercial is about 40. It's a little higher than 40, very close to that. Residential is typically 36, okay, but 38 would be a good location as well. Step 2 talks about how to mark your holes. Step 3, pre-drilling some holes. They obviously show a tool that looks like a hole saw in step 4. I would agree that a hole saw is a good tool to use, and then a spade bit or a fly bit in step 5. Outline your latch bolt and chisel your application. If you're using a router to do that faceplate, you won't have to worry about trying to chisel a radiused corner. A 1/2 inch 2-flute router, 2-flute carbide router bit on your router will make easy work of that. You won't have to square any corners or do any work, because a 1/2 inch diameter 2-flute carbide router bit will have a 1/4 inch radius, so that'll work. Pre-drill the holes for the latch bolt, because you don't want to run the screws in and then split the door. That's no good. You've taken all the time to properly drill it. Pre-drill the holes for the screws regardless of the type of wood, even if it's a very soft wood. So in step 7, I'm really not sure what they're... Okay, in step 7, they're wanting you to draw a line on the face of the door to the casing so that you can then locate your strike. Sure, you know, if the top of the door to the center of your hole is X, insert your tape measure to the underside of the header down to the center of where the strike will be X plus 1/8, because you've got an 1/8 of an inch margin at the top of the door. You know, they're making it really commonsensical for people who don't make a living drilling holes in doors for locks. There's nothing wrong with that application, except that, you know, you then have to transfer that horizontal line around to the rabbet of the frame, and they show how to do that. Locate center of strike hole by measuring back from doorstop, half of the thickness of the door. Not exactly. When you... The rabbet for an 1 3/8 door is not going to be 1 3/8. It's going to be a little bit more. That's because there's a small amount of room between the face of the stop and the face of the door when the door is in the closed position, and the door is generally inset slightly. So you're going to want to compensate. The center line of the door will be the center line of the rabbet when the door is at 0 degree. So you'll need to account for that small margin from the face of the stop to the face of the door. And you just add that to your half of door thickness dimension, and that will place you there properly. Step 9, drill the hole in the jamb, and then outline your strike prep and then chisel it. Again, if you're using a router to do that, you've got radiused corners. And then again, pre-drill your holes. They do a good job at showing how to... Oh, forgive me. I scrolled down further. There is a template at the bottom of page 4. Forgive me. I should have known better that they would have that there. They have got 2 marks in the edge of the door for 1 3/8 or 1 3/4. Okay, they make it really simple. And that is a hallmark of Kwikset. They have a... the one thing that they don't make simple necessarily for just anyone is how to go about and remove the cylinder from their keyed locks on their knob designs. You do need a special tool for doing that, and believe it or not, it's called a pickle fork. That's the industry term for the proper tool to remove that. So Kwikset's got a lot of neat information. There's a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Kwikset products that we sell, but a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. Any questions on the Kwikset? This is their SL1000WI in an 11P RCAL, radiused corner or round corner adjustable latch. RCS, round corner strike, is what that all means. Any questions on this or any other Kwikset product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.